This is the Hartford Online Radio Network. 21st Century Audio. Delivered. onthehorn.com.
Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday. It's Hartford Online Radio, onthehorn.com, and this is Business Buzz, the show all about business ideas and practical solutions from real, hands-on business owners. Business Buzz is sponsored by Gateway Financial, the accounting firm of Budwitz and Meyerjack, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, Sherpa Technologies, and CentralCTDental.com. I'm your host, Tommy Russo from L&R Advertising and Productions, and tonight our guest is Loretta Peters. But before we get to Loretta, as most of you know, I always like to start the show off with a quote, and coincidentally, the quote this evening is from a former host of the show and a guest of not so long ago, a gentleman named Alden Davis, who has a company called MyValueTree.com. Alden sent this my way, so Alden, here's a shout out to you. Intensity is a necessity. He's talking about the transition from 2011 to 2012. And he goes on to say, I believe the economic pressures and uncertainties of 2012 are going to exceed those of 2011. Alden, we hope you're wrong. Your best in 2011 is the launch point in 2012. This means heightened awareness and attentiveness, anticipating requirements, keen perception of the situation around us. There will be increased competition and scrambling for scarce resources just when we are most tired. This is when we must kick it up a notch and provide the best service we can. Do not accept poor performance from yourself or anyone else. Decide to increase your intensity in 2012. I think Alden, at least in some cases, has a really good point, and I love that intensity is a necessity. So with that said, welcome, Loretta.
Hi there.
Hi. Loretta, just to let our viewers and listeners know, is the owner of Competitive Edge Branding and self-acclaimed brand and online identity strategist.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about just that. What is a brand and online ID strategist?
Right. Well, first I'd like to say thank you for having me on the show, and I'm really
you.
excited to be here. And I chose my title as a brand and online identity strategist because I believe it really bridges the traditional media practices with today's online digital marketing demands.
Got it. Now, how long has Competitive Edge Branding been in business?
I started the company in January 2011, this year.
Wow, so you're about to celebrate your first anniversary.
I am. Yeah.
And how are things going?
It's been great. It's been a wonderful year, and I've been able to take my career experiences and really bring it to my business this year the way I've wanted to for a long time, so it's been great.
That's great.
She's
now,
30 days older than the horn. How exciting is that?
Did we start in December of 10?
No, I thought you were January.
January of 2011.
This year.
All right, so...
The horn was officially February of
2011. I
2011.
didn't realize that. I thought you guys had started before then.
Yeah, we were piddling with other stuff, but this was February.
So then we have 2 anniversaries to celebrate coming soon. I like that.
Party.
So anyway, before the show started, we talked a little bit about what got you to this point, starting in January of 2011. I'm going to ask you those questions once again. You know, tell us a little bit about the beginning stages of your career and what motivated you to work for yourself as opposed to working for the man.
Right. It was a great journey. I graduated from college in 91, and I received a business degree, a bachelor degree in business. And, you know, it was from the mindset that when I graduated that I should really look for a stable, large company to work for and build my career path there and just, you know, work to climb the corporate ladder. And so that's what I pursued. I pursued a global company right out of college and got a great job as a marketing support analyst and found that 3 years later, the department went bankrupt and I was having to look for a job.
When you say the department, not the entire company, just that particular department of the company, or the company as a whole went bankrupt?
Yes, this was a division of the company that went bankrupt, and they were announcing layoffs for the first time. and I found myself looking for a job, and I didn't know where to start or what to do about that.
So let me ask you a question. What time frame? Was this late 80s, early 90s? Where are we in history?
It was 1996.
Okay. Okay. So we had just kind of been coming out of which was one of the worst recessions, really, the late 80s into the early 90s, at least that I've experienced as a business owner.
Right.
And do you feel that that was part of why this particular company had the struggles that they did, or were they just mismanaged, or you have no idea why they went bankrupt?
Well, here's the thing. It was a startup division, and it was a department and insurance company. They started an annuity division to compete with the Hartford and the Travelers and the others. And they did not have a competitive enough foothold in the market or a strong enough brand to promote that division in order to compete effectively. And so 3 years later, unfortunately, they folded.
There you go. So what happens next to Loretta?
Well, from there, I went into, I saw the emerging trends in technology and telecommunications, and so I found myself next at a global telecom company, and really enjoyed enjoyed learning all about technology and how communications come together in the infrastructure of all that. And so I really enjoyed my next position and started investing my future in technology. I felt that I really liked it a lot, and found that this company went through a merger, and I hit the high times with this organization, and they merged with another company and several hundred others probably, and then they went bankrupt as well, and found myself at a third company, which was another technology company that I became a regional sales representative and did really well at this organization. And then once again, they went bankrupt as well. So this was over the course of maybe 9 years of my career path, and found that I needed to think of a different direction, and I could no longer trust the global brands as secure and safe companies to invest my career in. And so I decided to invest in the private sector, and I got a wonderful job at a small company, a publishing company, right here locally, and I found a wonderful experience there for the next 4 years, and really found a passion for small business, and really got to meet with business owners and learn their story about why they went into business in the first place, and how marketing and advertising was really important to them, and getting exposure. And so I just was so really inspired by everyone I had met through that experience, and I started thinking that I might have wanted to run my own company.
How great is that? But let's go back to, though, our conversation before the show started. You made a statement to me after you got laid off for the second time that there was an epiphany for you. And if you wouldn't mind, would you share that epiphany for those of our listeners, please?
Sure, if I can remember what I said. I just realized that careers, your career and plans and projects, they can all change on a dime, and you really can't depend on an organization to take care of you, and you really have to rely on yourself and figure it out, what you have inside that is going to want to either have a company hire you or have a client buy from you if you're going to go into business for yourself. And so I really started getting passionate. You and I were talking earlier about watching Tom Peters or seeing him speak, and he was an inspiration to me back then, even because I had seen one of his seminars. And he talked about the brand called You, which is a famous, article now that is out in the marketplace, that he had launched in Fast Company magazine in 1997. And I got it instantly as soon as I heard him speak about that, and said, yes, this is it, because we have to rely on ourselves. I mean, nobody can depend on, it's our reputation that's really left at the end of the day that companies are going to depend on. If you're credible, relevant, trustworthy, to be hireable, or to have someone work with you. It's just, it really comes down to your brand in the day.
I think it's well said. I think the other point that in so many words was made, but I'm just going to be here to reinforce it a little bit, is, we were raised with the mindset that corporate America was a safe place for us to find employment, be secure, and potentially be there from the day we start working to the day we stop working. Needless to say, that paradigm has shifted dramatically. And I think that that's why your story for me isn't particularly germane, because one, that's exactly what happened to you, and yet two, you recognized it. Instead of trying to burrow deeper into the corporate culture, you realized that, maybe it's time for me to look at doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
We're confident that many of our listeners are, in so many words, in the same situation that you found yourself in, that they're working right now for someone else and have desires to end that employment and begin to do something for themselves. What did that feel like for you? Was that, was that scary? Was that fun? Was that exhilarating? Was that all the above and then some?
I'd say yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you brought up too in your third employment is you got into sales. And as I think you probably well know, running your own business, whether you view yourself as a salesperson or not, if you aren't in one capacity actively promoting, actively selling, and maybe that's a bad word, but I don't really think it is, at least not from my mindset. If you're not, though, doing that, then the likelihood of your company being successful is slim to non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an easy transition for you to make, putting the sales hat on and getting out there and knocking on doors and picking up the phone and doing all the things that salespeople need to do back then and including today? Was that easy for you?
Right. Well, actually, that's the part of the business I love about what I'm doing. I love doing that. So selling was never really a challenge for me. I just love selling and being in front of customers and helping them out. So so I find that challenging. It's challenging doing all of it, I think. Organization is what I learned the most this year, is really how to organize yourself and plan accordingly so that you are effective and you have effective weeks and successful weeks. So
we had, I don't know if you know Kate Bolduc. Kate she worked for Travelers and then was the executive director for the Greater Hartford Arts Council. Mm-hmm. And Kate made a great point. I don't know if you remember this, Brian, when we had Kate on. She said that when she went from working in this corporate environment, meaning Travelers, to now heading up a nonprofit, she realized that, if she wanted to get most things done, she had to do it herself. She was so used to being in the corporate environment that whether it was the copier getting fixed or someone going out and running an errand or whatever, there were people within that corporate culture that enabled those jobs to get done and get them done effectively. But working in a much smaller environment, all of a sudden, it was really up to her or a small staff. And I'm hearing kind of the same thing from you. And that's what you meant before, and just being organized.
Mm-hmm. True, but I also think we have to embrace what's going on in the environment right now with this movement of virtual offices and virtual companies coming together. And there are lots of great resources out there that you can put together for your company so that you can implement the way you want your services to be delivered.
If you wouldn't mind, expound on that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people tuning in right now that don't understand what you mean by that. I do. I mean, my company has been a virtual company long before that term ever came into vogue, so I get it. But if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about what you mean by virtual company.
Yeah, well, the virtual office environment is really it's taken off, I think, all over the country. And really how I've defined it is finding like-minded resources that complement your business that you can perhaps work together on to fulfill a project need.
Okay.
And there's other, right now there's a trend of startup companies and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs coming into the market and really starting to live their passion the way they've always wanted to and figuring out that path and how they can actually build a company on their own. And I think one of the most effective ways is to attract those resources that can help you really develop, like I said, and fulfill the project. And then it's about packaging that and delivering that and selling that to the client in a way that doesn't really intimidate the client that this is how you're going to go about delivering the services, but that makes them feel more comfortable actually with working with your company. And there's tremendous talent out there right now and so I've come across, I've been lucky to really find some amazing people to partner with this year.
Well, you kind of read my mind.
Yeah.
So when you started your business essentially a year ago, how we'll use you as a case study. How did you tap into that virtual world, and how have you implemented? And again, using you so that our viewers and listeners say, she can do that, I can do that. You know, if it's really that easy. I mean, I believe that it is, but we'd love to hear your story if you wouldn't mind sharing it with us.
Well, it really comes down to, it's really one basic thing. It's networking. You need to get out and network and hit all the groups and learn and get to know people and what they do and learn their expertise and what their passions are and see if you can, you know, build something together. And it's really through networking. You're not going to find the resources unless you really know who's out there and what people are doing. And yes, you can do a Google search on a whole bunch of people and all of that, but you want to have the relationship. And there's a lot of elements that go into play so it's a perfect match for what you want to be doing with your company.
I have often referred to myself as a person-to-person person. And what I mean by that is, even though I do rely heavily on the technology as far as I'm concerned, and I think this is what you're saying, there's no substitute for sitting across from someone, shaking his or her hand, and really having a one-on-one competition.
Right.
What strikes me, though, is, and in part because of my own experiences with networking, we talked a little bit about that before the show started, that's a significant time commitment to be out at night and luncheons and whatever,
right.
You know, doing all of that networking, and yet at the same time, you know, managing the office and growing the business and bringing new clients in. So and I guess in part that's what you meant by time organization a few moments ago. How do you manage all that, Loretta?
Well, you have to network with a purpose, I believe, and you can't go to everything. So it's really being mindful about the things you are going to, and networking with a purpose, and have a goal in mind when you go, and why you're going to this group, and what you want to gain from it. And I find that's, for me, I mean, that's how my networking has become effective, because I go with a purpose typically.
I love that. I mean, it's funny because I've been practicing just what you framed so nicely, but I never thought about it in that framework, networking with a purpose. But for me, if I'm going to attend the function, I know that there's a certain person or two or three that I want to meet. I want to have a chance to sit with them and talk with them. So I really like that framework, and I'm going to use it from this point forward. So thank you.
Sure.
So thank you. So what have been, if you don't mind asking, some of the challenges for you this year in getting the business launched? Are there anything specific that you've really that you didn't anticipate going into running the business, you know, back in 2010 before you launched?
Yes. It's funny because the first half of the year I rolled out what I wanted to, and then I came up with a few other ideas and services that I felt my clients could really benefit from, and I really wanted to develop those services for them. And so I needed to take that time out to develop those services in order to fulfill what I wanted to. And I found by doing that, it took away from my time to build my business. And so I realized that what I've learned this year is to manage ebb and flow, and that was an experience to learn for myself. And I believed in these services, so I'm really glad that they're okay, that I have them now, because I have been able to roll them out, and it's been good. But it took me about 90 days or so, maybe 2 months, to develop those services, and I really felt that impact. So again, from a time management standpoint, and maybe I wanted to roll it out too quickly, and other people said maybe you should have just stuck with the one or the two service offerings for the year. But I felt that wasn't. I felt I needed to roll these out this year. So I'm still glad that I did that, and I felt this was the year to roll out all the services in year one. I mean, this is what year one is about, and you know, for what I'm doing here, and going into year two, I already have my strategies in place and my goals set, and and my markets I'm going to serve, and I've already planned all that. So
I want to
I'm really
explore
excited.
that more in detail in the second half hour. I want to remind folks, too, by the way, that we have Loretta Peters with us this evening. She is the owner of Competitive Edge Branding. What I'm hearing from you, and we didn't talk about this author, but I have a feeling that you might be a fan of his, too, Stephen Covey.
Sure.
And I've been a fan of Stephen's. Actually, I see that he has a brand new book out. I just happened to notice when I was with my daughter at Barnes & Noble the other day. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, one of Stephen's 7 habits is sharpen the saw. And that's what I'm hearing that you spent, a portion of your year this year adding, your own or at building your own skill base so that you would be able to in turn offer that. How important do you feel that sharpening the saw, building your own skill base is to the success of your business or anyone else's business?
Very important. Very important. You have to have a pulse on your business at all times and know what's changing and moving and what's in demand and what's not in demand anymore. And be okay with dropping off some services that just don't fit anymore.
I think that's a little bit scary for a lot of people. And I have to say, I mean, my business, believe it or not, we're soon to be celebrating 30 years as a Connecticut-based corporation. And so when we first started, no question change would occur. But it was at a little bit of a slower pace. But change right now is at rapid fire pace.
Right.
And so to be able to stay on top in some ways could be considered, at least by some people, maybe even me included, as a full-time, part-time job, is just recognizing that this marketplace is ever changing. Your clientele is ever changing. Everything is in flux.
Right.
And I mean, another Tom Peterism, there's no such thing as business as usual. And I remember reading that phrase for the first time, I think it was Liberation Management, one of his books, back in the 90s, and thinking, oh my God, he's absolutely right. Well, here we are in 2011 going into 2012, and he's never been more right that there's no such thing as business as usual. It just, it rapid fires. What are some of the resources besides your own? I mean, it goes back to our buddy Alden and what Alden was kind enough to send my way today. Intensity is a necessity. And that phrase really caught me from the moment I read it this afternoon. That's why I brought it in. But what are some of the resources that you rely on to stay, if not ahead of the curve, at least with the curve of change that continues to unfold? What are some of the things you do?
First of all, I love that quote from Alden, and it just resonated with me when you read it too. You have to stay connected with what's changing in the world. I just feel like you're right, and everything is changing, from our economy to different industries to our business sectors to the way customers are buying, the way they're socializing and communicating. Everything is a different ballgame, and just staying aware of where all of that is happening and to be a part of it really helps you define what resources you need to go after.
Now, you mentioned earlier on in regards to networking that though you can use Google up to a point, that it's not really your preferred manner. You'd rather be out there meeting and greeting, which I have to agree with 150%. Again, no substitute for being able to do what, in a sense, we're doing here right now. But what about the research? I mean, I have a subscription to Entrepreneur Magazine, Fortune Magazine, and I'd like to say that I sit down and when this week's edition comes out that I read it cover to cover, that would be a bold-faced lie. I comb through it and sometimes barely even comb through it because I'm moving at a rapid-fire pace myself. But I will find that there's some great bits of information in those. Are there other sources that you rely on that, our listeners will gain from in this particular moment?
For business resources?
Business resources. I mean, again, we both acknowledge, and Brian, I certainly would love your 2 cents on this if you want to jump in, that we both realize that the change in our economy and our society is at a pace that we've never realized in history. How, as business owners, do we stay on top of that to keep ourselves current and our business current so that we are not seeing us become obsolete before our eyes? There was a book written many, many years ago called Future Shock. I don't know, Alvin Toffler. You remember the book?
No.
Great book. His whole concept, this was written back in the 70s, and his whole concept was about the book is that we become unconscious, and then one day we wake up and we realize, oh my God, the world has changed around us. Now, that was back in the 70s. He was, I think, in many ways well ahead of, the curve. In this day and age, we could take a cat nap and not even a Rip Van Winkle sleep, but truly a cat nap and wake up and realize, oh my God, lots of things have changed in the midst of that cat nap. So that's my question. And, I think it's not only for our listeners, but for me too, curious as to how you manage all that and stay, if indeed you are all that you are, how do you stay on top of, managing that brand for yourself and for other people when the world is changing as quickly as it is?
Well, I think the world has always been changing quickly. It's just now we have other components added to how it's changing, like the internet. And so we have other things in our world now that are, making us think that, wow, everything's changing so fast. And it always was changing fast, I believe. We just didn't have as many resources as we do now. And I think, that we have so much information coming at us. I think we're all getting the information in one way or another. We're on top of, wow, we need to be social, and we need to get in social media and the internet and all these other vehicles. And I think our communities are aware of the changes in the information. I think they're inundated with the information. It's about how do we manage this information and what do I do with the information that I have here. And I think that's where my company helps other businesses make sense of all that, cutting through the clutter and finding the resources that really impact their business, the ones they really need that matter to take them to that next level, online and offline. So it's a myriad of tools that I help them work through, and combining it with building a strong brand for themselves and their products and services.
That's great. We're going to explore more of that, Loretta, in the next half hour. But before we sign off in this first half hour, I'd like to read a commercial from one of our great sponsors, CentralCTDental.com, featuring Doctors Camp, Sambora, and Lupini. He's got to be a nice Italian boy or girl. If you have a serious issues or routine checkup, go nowhere else. If it can't wait, there's only one office you need to call. If it has to be done right now, once again, there is only one office you need to call, and that's CentralCTDental.com. They're very easy to get to. They're on the Plainville-Farmington line. Their phone number, 860-747-5761. Once again, 860-747-5761. Or make an appointment online at CentralCTDental.com. We'll be back in a few moments, folks, with our guest tonight, Loretta Peters from Competitive Edge Branding. We'll see you soon.
Budwitz & Meyerjack PC is a large Connecticut-based CPA firm with offices in Cheshire and Farmington, Connecticut. Large enough to handle engagements of enterprises with annual revenues in excess of $100 million, yet small enough to cater to smaller businesses and individual clients who expect personalized attention from partners and staff. Client service is the cornerstone of our practice. Our clients have a fixed fee for their audit and tax work. What this means to the client is we're approachable. Personal communication and client services make for strong relationships. Budwitz & Meyerjack, certified public accountants.
Sandits Travel for business and leisure. We'll take you there. Sandits Travel has been proudly serving Connecticut since 1960. That's over 50 years. And we're ready for another 50 years of superior service. Whether you prefer to come in, call in, or log on, we invite you to explore how efficient, diverse, and fun it is to book through Sandits Travel. Save your money and your time with us. Sandits Travel. We'll take you there.
And the Emmy goes to Stats Magoo.
This is Mr. Magoo's first Emmy for an internet podcast. Recently, he came in second place in the Moodus County Fair Chili Cook-Off, and in 1973 was awarded the Sportsmanship Honorable Mention for 5th grade badminton.
Wow, wow. What a shock. I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. I mean, got so many people to thank. I mean, no, wait, I have to thank people.
That was Stats Magoo.
I love you, Mom.
Congratulations, Stats. Coming up next, Justin Bieber sings Smells Like Teen Spirit. We'll be right back.
Sharper than a marble. Smoother than 60 grit sandpaper. On the Horn. onthehorn.com.
Welcome back, folks, at Business Buzz. Our guest tonight is Loretta Peters, owner of Competitive Edge Branding. But before we get back to Loretta, we're going to do a commercial regarding Deepwater Seafood of Avon.
Deepwater.
And as Brian likes to say, just for the halibut. Great joke, Brian. All right, anyway, Farmington Valley's freshest seafood. They will work with you and your schedule. Call ahead, 860-676-9657, or fax in your order, 860-677-2281. Deepwater Seafood will set aside your order for pickup after work. You missed your cue, brother.
That's because you didn't give me a chance to say Deepwater, Tommy.
Deepwater Seafood.
Deepwater.
There you go. Their hours and days and hours, Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You want to know what's on their menu? I'm going to tell you. Sea scallops, fresh oysters, fish and chips, soup, bisque, chowders. Having a party, paella for 12, and a salad is all you need. Made with spicy chicken, sausage, scallops, shrimps, and just for the halibut. Deepwater Seafood of Avon. There is only one place to go in Farmington Valley for the freshest in seafood, and that is Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Is that horrible or what? Sorry, folks.
I was fantastic.
Yes, no, you were. It's me. I mean, they might as well tie an anchor to my shins on that one, I swear.
Go ahead. Try to say Deepwater right after I do. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, Farmington Valley's freshest.
Deepwater.
Yeah. You can't say it because
you want me to slow it down? Okay, I'll slow it down.
I want you to say Deepwater Seafood. Pause. Let me do my little shtick. It's like a little bit.
Okay. Next week, I promise everybody.
It's always next week. It's always next week. Next week.
We do have fun. So, Loretta, let's do a case study. You can make up a client, or something. Use my business. No, I guess that's not fair because we already have a brand. A new business coming into town, knocks on your door. They need help from
an online radio station.
An online radio station.
Let's make it hard.
Okay. What would be your system, for lack of a better word in this moment, to work with this particular client? And again, you don't have to give away trade secrets, but kind of help. And the reason why, once again, is that we know that many of our listeners tuning in right now are in that very position. They are contemplating starting a business, or they already have. And so any insight that you might be able to help they walk away from, and obviously we hope that they're going to be motivated by some of your responses, that they're going to pick up the phone and call you.
Sure, that'd be great. I think, well, first of all, I mean, I have a real methodical process that I use to help businesses with the branding and their business plan. So what I always say first is that, make sure you find a place for branding in your business plan, because it's not just about the marketing of services as part of the plan. You really also want to spend some time really thinking about the brand and your purpose for your company, and unearthing some of that within the messaging and what your company stands for, and making some of that be the brand. So, I take the business plan, we look at that, and then we also want to step aside from that and take a real good look at the branding. A lot of businesses miss the mark on their brand, especially the small private companies that are starting, or even if they're in business 3 to 5 years and longer. As they grow, they forget about the strength of their brand, or the stability, or even the foundation of their brand. Like, they miss the entire thing and they just go right into marketing. And I always say that if you don't have a solid brand, you're wasting money on your sales and marketing plans and your website and everything else you're doing, and you won't get a return on investment. And and I find that once all of that ties together, it really does bring them more business. I mean, once the brand foundation is done and the work we do together is done, everything else falls into place, and they do get more business as a result. And so there is a process that I use, and I use a 3-step process. I first fact find and gather all the information I need about the business and what we're going to unearth to bring them to market. Then we talk about ways to express that brand and the information that we have gathered together. And we start strategizing, creating a go-to-market strategy, and coming up with ideas and brainstorming. And then where are we going to express all of this information we have now on the web and in the real world? So how are we going to express this? And then managing it is the third part of the process, and it's managing it. And I give them the tools so they can manage it when our work is done, and then they have a way to continue on with the work that we've done together in a comfortable fashion that they understand and feel that they can control. It's not over their heads. It's not overwhelming. It's things they understand. And if they were to hire an agency later or a marketing company, they can have an intelligent conversation with that agency because they'll know and understand what they need to know by working with my company.
Can I ask you a question? I'm perplexed because I clearly have gone to business school, and I don't know, everybody has different ideas about what these two words mean. Marketing is different from branding. Are you saying that?
I am saying that.
Now, my idea of branding is not something you do. Your brand or branding is built by your customers' experiences. So when you think of the golden arches at McDonald's, they haven't pushed their brand onto you. You've created the meaning of that brand from your own experiences. And so when you say you're going to do your 3-step process and you're going to gather the data of what you want to say to people and then push the idea to market, to me, that's marketing. That's taking something internal and pushing it out to the market without, paying for advertising, which would be, the whore's way to market is just to is just to advertise, but whatever. But right. So that's what I'm confused by when you're saying build the brand. I don't hear things like how you're going to manage the customers or clients' expectations so they have a particular experience that's going to build the brand in their mind.
Right. Well, there's a 2-step process within step 1.
Okay.
So you're doing internal.
That's 5 steps for those of you keeping track at home.
Well, you have to survey the market. There's no question. You need the feedback from your audience and as far as what they're looking for. So you have to blend the both worlds, internal introspective work with external work, and taking all of the data together and analyzing that to come up with some authentic messaging.
Another way of framing the question, because it's funny, Brian, you and I were in somewhat the same place. What would be your definition of brand, a company brand? How would you define that? Because you and I are in similar industries.
I know it.
And I would have to say that the question that Brian just asked is one that I find a significant percentage of our clientele has similar confusion on. And not to say Brian's confused, but they're, I'm not sure what my brand is. I'm not sure what marketing is. So I'm curious as to, and again, more so for our viewers and listeners right now, what would be your definition of a company brand?
Well, I always, in my workshops and trainings, I use these examples. But to answer your question, first off, I believe it's an emotional experience. I believe you really have to tie emotion into the brand and the experience the buyer or the client's going to have. And so I use a couple of different examples in my workshops, and I'll say I say when you hear or see the word Volvo, what word comes to mind? And safety. And everyone in the room will say safety. And then I'll do the same thing with Apple. So when you hear Apple, what word comes to mind when you think of Apple? And everyone says innovation, and it's a group answer usually. And it's like, okay, well, strong brands usually stand for one thing, not 100 things. And so strong brands are also built in authenticity, because if Volvo, if there were reports out on Volvo every week or every month that they had crashes or that they were not safe or their parts weren't reliable, we wouldn't be thinking the word safety.
Point well made.
Right. And if we were, like innovation with Apple, I mean, where else can you go in the store and there's a Genius bar when you go in, right? There's no other experience there. And then when you buy a product, they email you a receipt, and there's nowhere else that they will email your receipt. Like HP doesn't do that. They don't even have a store. So it's just, those are the experiences that differentiate commoditized industries like cars and computers, and the same with coffee, which is overused with Starbucks. But again, it's the same example, because coffee is a commoditized industry, and Starbucks brilliantly separated themselves from this industry and created the best experience, in a lot of people's opinion, to go buy a coffee and spend $4.50, right? So
Blue Ocean strategy.
So again, it's about the experience and the emotion behind a strong brand, and strong brands can command a premium. And so when you're not a commodity and you don't compete on price, people will pay more for your service. And so what I help companies do is to build a strong brand based in authenticity and not so much on visual identity, logos and brochures and things like that. It really needs to be defined in one word.
That's a great way of putting it. So back to our case study. You now have helped them to solidify the brand. Would that be a good way for me to articulate it?
Yes.
And once you've gotten your client to that place, what happens then?
Oh, then the fun begins.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Then it's great.
Okay.
Because once we get in unearthing the brand is a lot of work. And I can imagine for larger companies, there's teams of people that do that for large organizations. And it does take some time. So I always say with my clients, let's get some foundation going, and you'll keep developing and growing into your brand. And when you set goals, your goals give your brand direction. And so as you are meeting your goals, your brand is growing and evolving, and then you're starting to really fit into the company you want to become. And that's why the vision is so important. So this allows companies to actually grow into their vision by having a solid brand and setting goals.
And how important, I mean, what I'm often surprised at, and Brian was kind enough to use, the McDonald's, company as an example. It never ceases to amaze me when I'm in a company's, when I'm doing business with a particular company, that even though the brand is well established in one form or another, it hasn't worked its way down to all of the people that are representing that company. So what focus do you put on when you're working with your clients to make sure that, and I'll use Big Y as an example. I don't know why they came to mind. They just did. From the bagger to the butcher to the grocery clerk to the produce person, how much value do you put on that, making sure that every single person in that organization understands the brand, embraces the brand, and does everything they can every single day to perpetuate the brand?
Absolutely. And especially today, it's more important than ever because employees are an extension of the corporate brand, no matter what size company you have. And so it's important that you work from the inside out, right? So we start at the employee level and unearth brands at the employee level and really make sure that they are consistent with the corporate brand, and they're actually instilling brand resilience with the organization. They also want to become brand ambassadors for that company, given social media and all these social outlets that our employees are on now. So it's really, really important that they represent the organization in that way. And when they are on social media, they can represent the brand with who they're interacting with there. And so it actually makes the brand stronger. When you have everyone together, working together in a consistent way, and I think the way you can bring that to these companies is you just really have to roll out some type of policy or talk to your employees about having a unified brand within the company, working from the inside out, and it's just having that conversation and putting some processes in place about it, which companies are doing. And working together so you can meet that goal, and it's really strong once it's all in place.
Now, do you find the companies that you're working with, the willingness to embrace it at the cellular level is there?
Absolutely.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's that willingness to do just that?
Because we are amidst this social movement right now. It's true. Everything is social. Our clients, our customers, our prospects, everyone is on social media. And so everyone in the company has a chance to engage with that customer as they're engaging in social media. And so not only that, they realize there's a whole other world there, right, in social media that they need to pay attention to as an organization. And so they need to bring that to the employees.
So I'm going to ask you to put your soothsayer hat on right now. Okay?
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, certainly social media has become an integral part of everybody's marketing strategy. And if you're not using it, then you're missing the boat. Where do you see social media taking us a year from now, let alone 5 years from now? If you and I were on this show 5 years ago this conversation would not be unfolding the way it is, at least in this particular moment. I think some of the things we're talking about are fundamental, but the whole social media component it's a wonderful wave. It certainly is proven itself to be long-lasting, but I'm just curious as to your thoughts as to where in 2 years, let alone 5 years, this is going to take us.
Right. Well, right now it's really not contained, right? It's kind of all out there, all over the place.
Good point.
And I feel that it's going to become more contained. I feel like there will be exclusive groups forming, and it's already starting in corporate America. In some ways, they're building internal social media intranets, right, for the employees to chat and express and share ideas. And that's going to even trickle down to the private sector, the smaller companies building these social media portals that are inside the companies. And where that will be beneficial is because then they can invite their clients to join that community. And then they're drawing in their clients within their own exclusive social media, experience. They're almost inviting them to have an experience within their company because they're being invited. So it'll be kind of, almost a privilege to be invited into, you're a customer now you get to participate in our community here within our company. So I see the contained groups forming more and more, and also I'm seeing a trend in like these sites coming up, like Angie's List, right, and honestly.com and even lawyers.com, where these are industry sites per se, but you're allowed to actually see who's a credible person to work with because there's testimonials written or things said if they're good to work with. Like when you go to Angie's List, you can tell if they're a good contractor or not.
Absolutely.
Because you can read what's being said, and I see that evolving as well. And in the next few years, more of those sites for credibility, because no longer it's good that we talk about ourselves and build our own online identity for our own credibility, but when others validate our credibility, it just makes our credibility that much more.
Well, I think you bring up an incredible point because, and this can happen in a wide variety of circumstances, personal and professional, where you feel the perception is one thing, and yet when you take the time and potentially in some cases have the courage to ask, what's your experience of what just unfolded? You might be surprised. In many cases, I think you are surprised to hear something coming back at you that you didn't experience whatsoever. So by these contained, social portals, if you will, within the company, if they are indeed allowing the clients in, which I think is a smart move, to be able to create an environment where the client really feels free, comfortable, maybe even empowered to say, I really like the way you folks do this, yet, here was a situation that didn't feel good, and here are the reasons why. I was treated indifferently, whatever the case may be. It's the only way the company raises the bar, because if, we're sitting around patting each other on the back, isn't that wonderful? But how do we really know how well we're doing until we hear from the people that we're serving? Absolutely. How well we're doing? And I think that's a great opportunity, because otherwise you're out canvassing, essentially. Coincidentally, I had a client in my office today, and it happens to be one of our very best clients. And just because of the nature of the conversation, I had the chance, and I was happy to do it, just to say, if you wouldn't mind, tell me what your experience is. How is it, that you experience working with my firm? Knock on wood. It was very favorable, but knowing this individual as well as I do, if there were issues, he does have that safety level with me that he would have been able to say, I really like the way you do this, Tommy, but I have to say that I've been disappointed here, here, and here. What other way do you do that? But based on what you're sharing, this is the first I've heard that. So thanks. I think that that's a great opportunity for all of us to be able to make available. We could even do that with, on the horn, Brian, and getting people to, I guess in some ways we already have that with the chat rooms and people giving us feedback.
We could do that. Right. We could do more of it.
Sure.
I think.
What other avenues could we use? Perhaps Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+.
And how can we serve you better?
Right. Ask
Right.
your audience, right?
Right.
But those are all public.
Yeah,
out
I mean,
there.
and is there anything more important?
Mhm.
I'm convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt that that you and I and Brian and everybody that we know in business is going to have more competition tomorrow than we do
Oh, yes.
today.
You said it.
It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to, and it goes back in some ways to what Alden was kind enough to write.
Mhm.
We need to be able to be at the top of our game. We can't get lazy for a split second because we're going to have more competition, and maybe the resources won't be scarcer, but there's going to be more people competing for pieces of that pie. And there is only one thing that distinguishes Competitive Edge brand to onthehorn.com to L&R Productions, and that's you, and that's me, and that's Brian.
Right.
Us as individuals, that's it. And that's what people are really remembering the most, at least as far as I'm concerned, is what's it like when I work with Loretta?
Mhm.
What does she bring to my table that no matter who her competitors are, I'm never going to get from anyone else because Loretta does this. And that's, and one more time, going back to our buddy, Mr. Tom Peters, either you are distinct or you are extinct. And that phrase is, one of the best I've ever heard.
And I wish I could say I was related to him, but I'm not. That would have been fun.
Okay. So listen, folks, we appreciate you tuning. Oh, before we go, though, I want to give Loretta one shot here. Loretta, please tell us if any of our viewers, any of our listeners want to reach out to you because they've loved what you've shared with us this evening. How would they go about doing that?
Right. You can find me on Google.
Okay.
Google.
Well, that's easy. No website you want to share?
That was my
Competitive
favorite
Edge
ever.
branding.
Okay,
It's
competitiveedgebranding.com.
Should be
Loretta,
on the
thank you
Google.
so
Just
much. It was
Google.
great
Google
having
me.
you here.
Mhm.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
it. Folks,
You
we'll
too.
see you next week. Brian, good to have you back. Were you on vacation last week?
I was down at in Florida, in Tampa, playing a really nice golf course.
Sounds like fun. All right, folks, thanks.
Great.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
At home, work, or your favorite coffee shop, if there's a Wi-Fi connection, get on the horn. Hartford's heart and soul. onthehorn.com.
Guantanamo Bay. They keep me here and they don't say when I could leave or how long I'll stay. Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay.